Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. We have gathered all of the Maple Leaf writers for the Hockey Writers together for a roundtable discussion tonight. And there is lots to talk about, as always, with everyone's either favorite team to bash or favorite team to love, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media channels, Twitter and Facebook, as well as subscribing to this YouTube channel. We got lots of great content for you to keep up with all the hockey content going on these days. So much of the best sport on the planet. So let's get right to it. We are joined by, I'm going to go around the clock here, Jim Parsons, aka the Old Prof. We also have Peter Baracchini and Andrew Forbes, and then the young student Alex Hobson joining us as well. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Let's set it up. One thing that's great about these new divisions, the Canada division here, is that every time the week starts, it seems like Toronto's playing the team that is just below them in the division, because they kind of swap all the time. And it's Winnipeg now that is right behind them. And by right behind them, I mean they're in second. There's a lot of points between those two teams. But they've only played Winnipeg once this year, a 3-1 win. Other than that, we don't really know too much about Winnipeg. That was back when Patrick Laine was still there, though he didn't dress for that game. They've changed quite a bit, and they're looking quite a bit stronger. And now the Leafs have got them for 3 straight. So let's start it up with, how about the Old Prof? Give us your take on what to expect in this Winnipeg series.
I have no idea what to expect because Winnipeg seems so up and down. I mean, when they get beat 7-1 by the Canadians, it's just I just can't understand the Winnipeg team. I don't know if they're a good team or a bad team. I know they have great goalie. I know they have great forwards. I think Dubois is really going to be good for them. Their defense seems to hold them into games sometimes, but I think the Maple Leafs have a better team, but I really have a tough time reading the Winnipeg Jets. And it's, as I say, it's tough for me. I never know what's going to happen. I would have not guessed that the Canucks would have beat them 2 games in a row. I would have not guessed that the Oilers would have been overwhelmed 3 games in a row. So I'm constantly amazed, and Winnipeg could rise up and give the Maple Leafs a game, but I'm thinking not, but who knows, right?
Right. And that's why we got to play the game, right? And it's all going to come down to that hop off the top, I think, because Toronto really looked a little bit slow against Vancouver. Now they've got a few days to recharge the batteries. Alex, do you think that'll make the difference?
I think it'll definitely help. And I think that was more so the case on Thursday night against Vancouver because we saw that they were on the second half of a back-to-back. They all looked a little bit gassed. And I think having 2 days rest in between before they go into this Winnipeg series will do them favors. But at the same time, you got to be ready to shut them down. Winnipeg's the Old Prof hit the nail on the head when he said that you never know what to expect in a North Division game because we've seen a Leafs team that beat the Oilers, and not just beat the Oilers, overwhelmed them 3 games in a row. And then we also have a Leafs team that blew a 5-1 lead to the Ottawa Senators. So we don't know which version of the Leafs we're going to see against Winnipeg. And I know Pierre-Luc Dubois absolutely loves torching the Leafs. We saw that in the bubble when he was with Columbus. And he's one of those guys that he's going to keep chomping at the bit, and he's going to sit there and pick and pick and pick. And then the Leafs got to be ready for that.
Yeah, there are some great players there. How do you deal with that, Forbes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys already talked about it a little bit, but Dubois is starting to click. He's 9 games in now with Winnipeg. He's got 6 points. 4 goals. He's starting to play well, but I mean, you're talking about a Winnipeg lineup that has scoring up and down. Neil Pionk has 18 points. Andrew Copp has 15 points. Paul Stastny has 14 points. I mean, this is a really deep team, and we talk about it on paper all the time. The Leafs are great. The Leafs are good. Peter and I joked about it a little bit when we recorded our latest episode of our podcast that the Leafs did great in Edmonton and then seemingly forgot to pack the wins when it came to heading out to Vancouver. So whether the bag was left at the airport or what, I don't know, but it was a different team in Vancouver than it was in Edmonton. And it was quite evident the way that they played. And it'll all depend on which team shows up. At the end of the day, this North Division is easily going to be one of the top scoring divisions at the end of the year. Goals are coming from every which direction. And you heard the names I just mentioned for Winnipeg. I mean, they're scoring throughout the lineup for both of these clubs. So it'll depend on which team shows up. And I think if the Leafs can put together the defensive effort that they did against Edmonton, you're talking about a solid 200-foot game for a team that, hasn't always been known to play that 200-foot game.
Right. And the first time that they met was the first time that the Leafs tried the 7 defenseman strategy as well, and just were able to pull out the 3-1 win. Marner with 2 goals. Tavares had a goal in that game. But other than that, watching that game back, there's not a lot to pick off from there, because I do think it's a bit of a different team since a month ago, as all these teams have developed pretty fast during that. That's why it's going to be great to have them as a 3-game series. We're really going to figure out what kind of teams these are now. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, definitely think that, at the beginning of the season, they were still trying to figure out their line combinations, trying to figure out who's playing who with who, clicking together and everything like that. But I think now you have a general picture of who's going to succeed or go forward with the Maple Leafs right now. And, for example, that line of Ilya Mikheyev, Pierre Engvall, and trying to blank Zach Hyman. I can't believe I forgot about him for a quick second there. That line just started to generate so much, and it was just too much to handle for the Edmonton Oilers and even for the Vancouver Canucks at times, although everybody seemed to be kind of fatigued and, just wasn't clicking on all cylinders in terms of their passing, puck management, and everything like that. I think it just got the best of them. And now with the time to regroup going forward with this team set up for success with all their mainstays in the lineup, maybe we could get a general sense of how it's going to go forward from now on.
Right. I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you. I know our lineup next had the back-to-back sweeps, but we've all kind of talked about that now. And that can go into our next topic, into a 3-game series here now, coming off of a 2-game series, before that, a 3-game series. These mini series that they kind of compared to kind of the baseball schedule. Give me your guys' thoughts on that. And is that something that when the world returns to normal, that the NHL should continue with these longer series against one team as the world does return to normal? What do you think, Alex?
I personally like it. I think it's something that they could definitely incorporate in the future, because while it's the safest way to go about it in terms of COVID, it's also just, it saves money when you're talking about travel. It makes things a lot easier. You're planning for a 3-4 day trip to Montreal or Ottawa rather than go Montreal and then Vancouver and then Boston. I'm dropping random cities here, but you get the point. And it also makes for good marketing. Like, I think we look back at that game against Calgary where Jake Muzzin did the little flip puck over into Matt Tkachuk's chest. If you've got something like that brewing and then you have Calgary lined up for 2 games after that, it'll make people want to tune in. And I think it allows for rivalries to brew a lot easier if you're playing the same team for 3 games at a time or something like that. And while I don't know if it's something that they'd incorporate as a full-time thing, I think they definitely try it out beyond this year when it comes to the schedule.
For me, and I know everything will return to normal and the Leafs won't be out west. I'm out west, and for me, that was the one ticket that is skyrocket for the year, and that's when all the season ticket holders make their money by me paying them for that one Leafs versus Oilers or Leafs versus Flames ticket. But wouldn't it be nice if they were here for 2-3 shows at a time for all those Leaf fans that really want to see their team at any given city? Forbes, I know you love looking at the stats and everything as well. If you play 3-game series, does that give you a little bit more of a sense on what guys are doing against lines and kind of a better sense of those 2 teams playing each other?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about the matchup game all the time in hockey, and you can either build off it or you can throw it into the mixer and come up with new line combinations to go against specific players on specific teams. I mean, Toronto did a great job in Edmonton. We'll go back to that for a second, and shutting down Connor McDavid and shutting down Leon Draisaitl. They combined for a point over 3 games. So, for them to kind of play off of that, I think it's a great idea to have these 3-game series. And you talk about Winnipeg, they're the most traveled team year in and year out. For them to be able to go into a city and play 3 games and not have to travel, I mean, you could be talking about a completely different team at this point. Throw on top of that, can you imagine what these players are thinking about if they're going down to Vegas for, let's say, a week at a time to play 2-3 games? I mean, like, just that alone, let's just let that resonate for a second. You're in Vegas for a week. These boys are going to like it.
Let's cancel this idea right now.
Unless Lou Lamoriello's running that team, then they won't.
Yeah, exactly. Peter, with what Forbes was just saying about shutting down Connor McDavid, I was very surprised that Connor and Leon Draisaitl could not make it work through the game 2 and game 3. Adjustments were coming. So that was another thing that both teams could learn off. I'm sure Tippett and Keefe both took a ton of notes from those games on how to shut down these very elite dynamic scorers. So do you learn more the more you see them, and you don't go somewhere else and have an awful road trip and you don't really see the game at the top of their performance?
I think it does play a factor, definitely. And like you said, like the whole entire mini series, kind of the baseball format, you get a sense with that when we see the Toronto Blue Jays play. A lot of the time they have their whole roster for maybe 2 games, and maybe for the 3rd game insert a couple extra players. This would go well this time around because you do have a taxi squad right now. You could give someone a night off like they did with Travis Boyd and insert Nick Patan in for the first game in the back-to-back. But at the same time, it does help out with the matchups, because if one coach decides to go one route and the other one tries to try something else, it tries to get the creative juices flowing to see how things can play out. And we saw Edmonton try and add or adjust their lines mid-game to try and get both McDavid and Draisaitl going. Didn't quite work out, and Toronto was still there playing their game plan, same lines, same structure, same defensive pairings, trying to shut them down, and it still ended up working for them. But just going back to the scheduling for a quick second, I'm all for it. I would love to see it happen on these mini series. But the one thing that baseball excels in than the NHL is the fact that they're playing 162 games as opposed to just an 82-game season. So the condensed schedule for the NHL, if they try to expand some games, could work out. At this point, it's kind of up in the air.
Right. Now back to the fan part and the marketing that was mentioned too. Being that the Old Prof and I are both out west, when the Jays, you threw the Jays out, when they come to Seattle, that is all of Western Canada that migrates across that border, and it is a great time. It feels
absolutely.
like home, and I love it. And if the team that you cheer for is going to be in a city somewhere close to you, or maybe you're traveling there for vacation anyway, and you can get 3 games watching your favorite team instead of just 1 for that trip, that would just I'd love it. I love the Seattle Blue Jays series every year too. Old Prof, chime in on this one.
Well, I think the NHL is losing money. And I think because they are, the business approach would be to continue to save money by pulling off the small series as they're doing. And it strikes me that will be with us for a while, whether people want it or not. The money talks, and I think that would be a wise thing to do as a money saving thing. So I like it too, as you say. I like to see the same teams going. It strikes me that every series is almost like the playoffs now. I get that sense of it. So I think it'll happen. I think it has to happen. And there'd be so many changes from COVID. COVID impacted changes in the way the season works and the way that people plan the season. I think will be a very different hockey season 4 years from now than it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I guess on the flip side of that is you look at that series when St. Louis and Arizona had 7 straight games together. If you get a team where maybe somebody's blowing the doors off and fans are kind of checked out, I don't want to watch this crappy team anymore. When St. Louis have a new team in or whatever it may be, you could see, we're in Canada, so all the games are great for us, but there are other markets that struggle. And if a team comes in that no one really cares about, and they're going to be there for 3 games, and in that crazy example, 7 straight games against each other, there could be a downfall that way as well.
Yeah, in Arizona, because I being retired or pretending to be retired and all, having a house in Phoenix area, it's a when the Oilers come to town or when the Maple Leafs come to town, the tickets are about 5 times as expensive as when Columbus Blue Jackets come to town, for example. And so I think Phoenix will miss the Canadian teams because there's so many snowbirds there. So it's and probably the same in Florida, right? When the Maple Leafs play the Lightning. So I think that will be one thing I hadn't considered really when I was speaking before, but that would be an impactful thing.
Anyone else got the flip side of that they want to bring to the table? Nope, we're good.
Oh, I mean, like you said before, like the money speaks and the money talks. So if the money is going to affect them, positive or negative, I mean, it's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, I think realistically, like if these miniseries, if you do it in a regular season where you've got fans, it's really going to define which teams are legitimate, successful teams when it comes to the NHL. And I think, I mean, we can tell you from the outside looking in that Arizona has been a bit of a problem for a number of years. Ottawa's another one. I've been to games in Ottawa. You've got an arena in the middle of nowhere. It's bad placement, and that's all it is. Realistically, it's bad placement. I think if you move Arizona to an area where, you're not in Glendale, you're in somewhere that, you're going to be able to draw fans, people can cab it in, go have a few bubblies and have a good night out. It's going to change the impact of that team. Regardless of what team's coming in. If you're a hockey fan, you're a hockey fan. You're going to a hockey game if you can afford it. At this point in time, I mean, you're talking about a 4 or 5 year plan for the NHL to really get back in the good books when it comes, or get back into the black. If you're talking financially, you look at it now, you're not seeing that upper cap going up significantly over that time, because right now the players are making their bank. Eventually the owners have to make their bank back as well. And the way to do that is to even it out 50-50 with a little bit more going towards the owner side over the next 4 to 5 years until it all evens out. And if that means less travel, money is kind of what they're going to be looking at. That's going to really define where we go from here.
And Forbes, I'm seeing the Vernon Wells behind you, and we're talking Blue Jays. And isn't it great to hear the crack of the bat back? I know that's another topic. That's another sport altogether. But I can't wait till they're back playing in Canada as well, and we can also do that Seattle trip. I'll see you there. We'll
young club and TO, and definitely. I used to be a ticket holder in Toronto when I was living out that way, and it's exciting. It's exciting to have it back, and a couple of successful Toronto teams I'm hoping for this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe when we get closer to the season, we can talk some more baseball and the hockey writers. No one will mind, I'm sure.
Okay. The multi-sport writers.
Yeah.
Right. So, guys, this is episode number 3. Let's recap. Episode number 1, we all took a few discussion points about William Nylander. We thought, that was when Willie he wasn't going so well for Willie. What's Willie do? He comes out, he's now named Willie Styles, and he's loading the net up with pucks, right? Last week we said Jimmy Vesey. We all really were pulling for this kid. We hoped he could turn it around here in Toronto, but you know what? Not happening. Maybe he just needs to go with the Marlies. And I believe even Peter wrote an article about that as well. So Peter, you can pick up the story from here of Mr. VC from here on in.
Yeah, I just talked about this with Forbes earlier on when we recorded our podcast. It seems like no matter what I write, the opposite seems to happen. And, it's just the running joke is maybe VC read my article and maybe just said, hey, you know what? Maybe I got to put it together. But in reality, I mean, this is a player who has been struggling for quite some time. I believe he had like 17 games without a goal, or 13 games without even a point streak going on as well. And to see him score and then score two more times in the following game right after that, I mean, this is the confidence and this is the motivation that should like help him going forward. I mean, he's battling for his spot, and when Wayne Simmons comes back, it's going to create more of a logjam. So someone is going to have to sit. And right now, with this road trip against the Edmonton Oilers, and even looked pretty good against the Vancouver Canucks at times, he made a statement. And this is what you want to see with all the players, because they know that fringe players like him can be set at any point at any moment. And the fact that he vaulted his name back into conversation, letting Sheldon Keefe know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm going to make the decision tough for you. And this is a story that you really love to see, because he needed the confidence boost and he got it.
Now, Old Prof, I know you love them all, and I know you weren't on the show last week, so I don't want you thinking we were sitting here slamming them. We were all really hoping he could turn it around. But tell me what you've been seeing out of VC this week, and suddenly confidence with this kid.
I don't know whether it was Peter's. Peter and I had a little conversation on Slack about this, but I was thinking about a few years ago, and when Gauthier was a member of that fourth line, and just how smart Sheldon Keefe was, and how smart the organization was to conceptualize the third line as it is, as a sort of a shutdown line, and then the fourth line really with Jason Spezza in charge of that line. Because in Edmonton, as when VC was talked to, he kept saying they kept throwing the first line out against the fourth line. So they really had to play defense. Now, where I'm getting with this is that we used to say with the salary cap problem that they needed a fourth line under $3 million. They got it. And not only is it a fourth line under $3 million, it is not an energy line anymore that just goes out there and hope nothing bad happens. I mean, Spezza is pushing the envelope constantly. And VC, even when he wasn't scoring, was playing good, solid defense. He's smart. He knows where to go with the puck. Boys, when you hear Spezza talking about Travis Boyd, how much chemistry they have together, I think that fourth line really is special. It might be the best fourth line in the NHL. And I don't know that because I don't follow all the US teams as much, but I liked VC even when he wasn't scoring. I thought he added stuff to the thing because he was smart and he played good defense, and he really works hard to be in the right place. You can see it. Yeah, I watch him on the ice a lot, and I can see it. He knows what to do. And even if he wasn't scoring, okay, that's good, but they're not playing defense. And that fourth line isn't always in front of their own goalie. I think that's what really has changed it. And I think that really adds value. So I like all those guys. And I mean, you can tell what kind of a fan I am because Tyler Ennis was my favorite Leaf for a long time, right? For that 1 year. I like these guys who have stories. They're really trying to make a comeback. I got to root for VC. I think he's just, but he's a smart guy. He adds value to the team. I loved it when he scored the first goal in the first game of the season. I love it that he's scoring. But even if he shut down, I still think he would make that fourth line under $3 million. I think he's at 900,000 or something. Mm-hmm. Really a special line. So I think it adds value to the team.
Right. Alex, we talked about last week, starting him at the beginning of the season on that second line with Tavares and Nylander, that a ton of pressure's got to come along with that. You're coming off a pretty tough year already, and then you get put on with these elite guys that are expected a lot out of. Do you think the move to the fourth line and that mentorship under Spezza is what's been turning it around for VC right now?
Well, first and foremost, I think the main thing that helped VC turn around was Peter's piece. I think Peter's got to keep writing articles about anyone that slumps, and they'll turn it around.
Noted.
On a serious note, though, I personally think that while having Spezza there as a mentor definitely helped him out, he was with Spezza for probably about 10 games at least before he finally scored and started to put up points again. And I personally think that what really got him going was Sheldon Keefe's quote after practice. I think it was going into that Wednesday game against Edmonton where he said, VC has not done enough offensively to make his mark in the lineup. And I remember when the season started, Jimmy VC, I think it was on the 31 Thoughts podcast with Friedman and Merrick. He said that he was coming into training camp with his hair on fire. That's the mindset he wanted to adopt coming into training camp. And I think that what Sheldon Keefe said after practice a couple days ago is what actually set his hair on fire and got him going. And the old prof has a good point where he says that VC's good defensively and he does stuff on the ice. He knows what to do. He hasn't really been a liability on the ice. He's just been super, super quiet. But I think now that he's got the monkey off his back and now that he's started to score a little more, I don't think his removal of the lineup is as impending as we thought it was maybe last week. I mean, Sheldon Keefe, I hear people make the argument that like, oh, well, those goals were just easy tap and Spezza did all the work. And it's like, okay, you can say that. But when VC goes back to the bench, I don't think Sheldon Keefe's going to say, hey, listen, but I know you scored 2 goals, but they were garbage goals. So we're going to bench you. Every goal counts the same on the score sheet. And I think that as long as he keeps producing at a respectable rate, at least you're not going to score a goal a game on the fourth line, obviously. But I think as long as he does enough to kind of keep his head afloat, I think they're going to keep him in the lineup.
You went on that too, Forbes. Is VC cemented that spot right now? We've got Simmons coming back in a couple of weeks. All those guys on the taxi squad wanting to get back in. Is VC done enough?
I'm going to go the other way. And I'll start it with this. You all remember how VC came into the NHL. He made a mini LeBron James decision, kind of narrowed down the teams, minus the live television, blah, blah, blah. He was very high on himself. And that's great to have that confidence as an athlete. That's phenomenal. Came in, has been, with New York, played some decent hockey. Buffalo kind of tailed off and then, comes to Toronto and look, 3 goals in 3 games. It is great. And there is no video on the score sheet. So whether they were garbage goals, tap-ins, easy opportunities. I mean, at the end of the day, people who didn't watch the game don't look back and say, hey, Jimmy Vesey had a tap in. I think Alex is spot on with saying, Keefe's not going to sit there and say, wow, great job, you tapped it in. He's going to pat him on the back and say, keep it going, kid. But for me, you're not taking Travis Boyd out of the lineup. His shooting percentage right now is 20%, which I mean, doesn't say much. He's only taken, I think, like 20 some odd shots, but he's on pace for a career point per game average. He's playing well. He's getting into the grimy areas. You're not separating that third line of Engvall, Mikheyev, and Hyman at this point. They're creating so many opportunities. Spets is not coming out of the lineup. So when Simmons comes back, who's your odd man out? At this point, it's VC. And that's not to say he hasn't played well. He has played well in the defensive end. At the end of the day, for 80% of the season so far, he's been a ghost on the ice. And I think that's what it comes down to. If he really wants to cement this spot in the lineup, it's not going to take 3 games. It's going to take, a full 2-3 weeks of him creating opportunities, making the players around him better, being that defensive throttle that the Toronto Maple Leafs need for him to actually cement that spot. And then you're creating a difficult decision for the coaching staff. At this point in time, 3 games is not a tell-all for any player, regardless of what your history or your past triumphs are in this league. So for me, Jimmy Vesey is still the guy coming out of the lineup. If he doesn't at this point, I mean, he's got pictures of somebody because I'm just not convinced at this point.
We were kind of speculating about that last episode with his dad being on the coaching staff. Was there something there? But Keefe has been seeing something in him. He's been keeping him on the ice, and it's starting to pay off. So hopefully it can keep going from there. So that all kind of goes into our next topic as well. And before we get to the next topic, I'm going to remind everybody, social media channels, the Hockey Writers. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook, as well as head over to our website, thehockeywriters.com. Check out all the great information from all these great writers here, as well as a staff of, I don't know, what are we over 100 anyway, writing about all the teams in the NHL. So check us out there. Now to our final topic of the night. I wrote an article on this, and that's kind of why I threw it out on the subject list, because I really wanted to hear your input as well. Will there be a trade? My article was 5 reasons why there won't be a trade. And that's for reasons, Forbes, that you just kind of talked about. Like, even right now, there are tough decisions to make when a player that they already have is coming back into the lineup. So that was one of the 5 reasons, but I don't see them making a trade for salary cap reasons, for the time. If they get somebody out of the US, you've got the quarantine, then you've got the practice time and everything else. What were some of my other ones on there? But the chemistry obviously being a big thing too, with a shortened season. You got to keep with the chemistry right now. So these are the reasons why. Am I wrong? Do you guys still think that there's going to be some big trade for this top 6 forward that certain people like to talk about? Pick it up from there. Who wants to take that one first?
I'll jump on that, guys, if you don't mind. Peter, again, I'm gonna steal your point from this morning when we were chatting that I think the problem with trading right now, there was some speculation that Toronto's in a win now mentality, that they've got all the right pieces, and they need to go out and get that extra player to kind of solidify what they can do on the ice. That being said, I do agree with you, Kevin. I think, the 14-day quarantine is going to be a big thing. I don't see them giving up their top prospects for anybody. There's rumors that Nick Foligno could be coming Toronto's way, and that they could give up somebody like Sandin. But we all know that came from Steve Simmons. And if you're a Toronto fan, I mean, you kind of read lightly when you're reading Steve Simmons' column. But aside from that, I do think the 14-day quarantine is going to be huge. You're in a shortened season. If you're bringing somebody in, it's for a future move. It's somebody that you want to have there long-term, not just for this shortened season. Because if you're win now this season, you're going to be in win now next season. Minus your Spezza, minus your Thornton, likely minus Vesey, likely minus Bogosian. Those guys likely not coming back. That said, Kevin, again, you nailed it with the cap situation. If it's going to happen, it's going to be a roster player for a roster player, or multiple roster players to clear some spots. So the one guy I can see moving is Alex Kerfoot, only because of his current cap hit. Aside from that, I don't see any sort of big move happening. At the end of the day, I mean, we're in a funky season right now. You want to get things done. I get it, but you don't want to sacrifice your future. I mean, I think Toronto's been doing that long enough, and right now they have a great pipeline. Why would you trade somebody like Liljegren or somebody like Sandin for a player that might not stick around long term?
And that's one of the key takeaways I got when Brendan Shanahan came to the franchise, and it was, we are going to be good for a number of years, not just 1 year. And as much as everyone would like to see throw in every draft pick you've got and make something work, bring in a superstar, this is a Stanley Cup year. They've not done that. You could argue they could have done that last year, 2 years ago, because they were playing well at those points as well. But Peter, he already stole one of your points. So instead of me still talking and maybe taking another point, how about you take it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a fantastic article that you wrote, and I kind of repeating what Andrew said. It's difficult when you have so much success right now and everybody's clicking, all 4 lines are rolling. You don't want to break that up. You want to keep the momentum going, but at the same time, if you are in a win now mode, why not try and take one move that you can make and maybe not jeopardize as much. I mean, when I look back to the Jake Muzzin deal, when we gave up Sean Durzi and Carl Grundstrom. Carl Grundstrom is in seeing regular minutes with the LA Kings right now, and Sean Durzi really hasn't seen much time at all. So Kyle Dubas could try and wiggle his way around and try and see a prospect that may not have a chance at all to make the team and give that up as an incentive moving forward. Having said that, bringing someone in, and I mentioned him, Ricard Raquel, he's someone that has an extra year on his contract. And Andrew mentioned it, contract in, contract out. His contract is very comparable to Alex Kerfoot, and he was a former 30 goal scorer. He could definitely help them up in the top 6, which is what they're trying to go for. But again, uncertain times, difficult situations right now. Will it happen? I want to say yes, just because you want to have a chance to, even if you throw in your first round pick this year, you still have another first round pick. You're not going to constantly give away your first round picks because they're extremely valuable. And we saw with the pick with Rodion Amirov this year or last season with the draft, how valuable he's slowly starting to become. And it's all basically the ball is in his court right now. If he wants to make a move, great. If not, I totally get it.
Mm-hmm. Old Prof, what do you think of the other part of this article was why would Kyle Dubas make this move? He's got everyone that's ever criticized him now eating crow, right? He's done it with this core 4 that I wasn't a fan of. He's done it. Like, you cannot argue with the results that the Leafs are getting right now. So do you see him doing anything else with this team, or this is the team that's gonna go all the way, or not?
I don't think he'll make a trade like the Foligno trade. It's just a no-brainer. Isn't going to happen. I can't see it happening. But he might. What Toronto does is it's a great market for people like Thornton and people like Spezza. Spezza really changed. I think it changed Dubas's idea of how to fill out that roster. And in fact, I heard someone, an announcer, I think during the Canucks game, I don't know whether the East gets the same announcers we get in the West, but talk about how that core 4 really has turned into a benefit rather than a problem, because now they can fill up that bottom part of the roster at league minimum salaries. And that's been wisdom on their part to do it. Maybe they knew it before, but right now they can get on 1-year contracts a whole slew of players who want to come. And as long as they keep that core 4 together, they know they're going to be a great team. They know they're going to be a solid team. They know there's a chance for someone like Thornton and Spezza, who have not won a cup yet, to have one more chance at it. And I'll sign on for $700,000 for that chance. So that's an amazing thing that Toronto has in spades that other markets don't have. So I think if he's going to make a trade, it might be there rather than a high salaried player. I just can't see it happening. It makes no sense. Plus, I think they're confident that they have it this time. I think they're confident in that third line and the fourth line, and Forbes, I think, is a great thing. When Simmons come back, that's a good thing for the team. He's just something very special. So all that together, I can't see them making a trade, but honest to gosh, Dubas is way smarter than I am. So if he does, I'll probably say, holy, I didn't see that coming, but way to go, right?
Yeah, and that's what I talked about in the article too, is all these people that are hoping for a fast, quick, experienced leadership guy that gets into the corners and isn't afraid to throw down the gloves if need be. They want that guy to come in a few weeks. Well, guess what? He's coming in a few weeks. Cannot wait for the Wayne train to get back, and you don't need to make a trade for it. So, Alex, you get the last word on this one. Do you think that there is a trade coming in the next coming weeks here?
Well, I want to preface this by saying that I've given up trying to predict what Kyle Dubas will do, because I know there's been instances where I've watched the trade deadline and nothing's happened. And then there's been instances where on Canada Day, just over a year ago, he dropped a blockbuster and traded for Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot. And I didn't hear any speculation leading up to that one. So I have no idea what Dubas's plans are. But I will say I'll half agree with your article, Kevin. I think I think all the talk of, like we were talking before the show started, with Taylor Hall or something like that, or a Philip Forsberg, I think that's all rubbish. I don't think the Leafs are going to fork over futures or anything like that to make a deal for a high-end guy like that, a high-end rental. Having said that, in watching the Leafs game on Thursday night's broadcast, Elliot Friedman mentioned that over the next, I think after this series with the Jets, the Leafs have 5 games in 14 days. So I think that, especially with how I think the way they've got it arranged, they only played, I think they have a 5-day break between March 10th and 15th, and then another 5-day break between the 16th and 21st or something like that. I'm not sure what the exact dates are, but they've got 2 5-day breaks over a 2-week span. And I think if there's any time for Dubas to make a trade, it would be then, because that way, if, like Forbes said, if you're trading a guy like Alex Kerfoot, I think the Leafs can survive without Alex Kerfoot for 4 days, or 4 games rather. And I think I don't think that an upgrade is needed, but I think they could use one, and especially if they're in it to win it this year. Wayne Simmons did look good alongside of Nylander and Tavares, but if you do trade for a guy like Raquel in that top 6, and you don't have to fork over anything that might screw you over in the future, Wayne Simmons is a guy that you can use just as well on the 3rd line or the 4th line. And I think if Dubas is going to make a trade, he's going to take advantage of that 2-week span where they don't have too many games going on. But other than that, I really don't know what to expect. So I'm going to let Kyle handle that one, and I'll just be sitting here writing about it when it happens.
Right.
If it happens.
And that, I think we all kind of touched on it during the last half an hour in one way or another, is that we're all just super impressed by Keefe and Dubas. These are young guys that have come into the biggest league, the biggest team in this league, and are doing things different. And when we kind of question why is Vesey still on the ice, Keefe is seeing things that we're not seeing, and I've kind of given up on that as well, as predicting what they're going to do, because throw it out, like they are making this their own right now, and it's really hard to predict. And it's a lot of fun to watch, it's a lot of fun to write about, and it's a lot of fun to talk to you guys about. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening to us talk tonight. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram, and head on over to the website, thehockeywriters.com, for all your hockey information, news, and insights. Until next week, this is the Maple Leafs Lounge, out.